The detention facility on Kepler Station buzzed with the usual tension that came with housing the galaxy's most dangerous criminals and outcasts. Deep in the lower levels, past the murderers and war criminals, past even the bioweapon smugglers, sat a cell that most guards avoided. The creature inside had been there for 3 standard years, and in all that time, not a single being had volunteered for transfer duty to that sector. Zekhar was a Vorthak, a species known throughout the galaxy for their incredible physical strength and nearly impenetrable hide. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 muscular arms and skin like living metal, the Vorthaks were feared across dozens of star systems. But Zekhar was different from his kind in ways that had ultimately led to his banishment and imprisonment. The morning shift guards whispered about him as they passed his cell block. Some said he had murdered an entire colony. Others claimed he had betrayed his own species to enemy forces. The truth was far more complex, but truth rarely mattered in places like Kepler Station. Zekhar sat in the corner of his cell, his massive frame folded into a position that might have looked meditative if anyone had bothered to look closely. His 4 arms rested at his sides, and his large, dark eyes stared at the reinforced wall across from him. He had not spoken to another being in over a year. The sound of approaching footsteps broke his concentration. Multiple sets of boots, moving with purpose. Zekhar's enhanced hearing picked up the nervous breathing of at least 4 guards and the lighter footsteps of someone else. Someone much smaller. "This is barbaric," came a voice, high-pitched and clearly agitated. "You can't seriously be considering this." "Orders are orders," replied Guard Captain Vex, his voice carrying the weary tone of someone who had given up questioning authority long ago. "The prisoner transport to Omega Prison leaves in 6 hours. She needs a guardian for the journey." Zekhar rose to his feet, his movement causing the cell's motion sensors to activate the overhead lights. Through the transparent aluminum barrier, he could see the group approaching. 4 guards in standard station security armor, their weapons drawn but pointed downward. Behind them walked Captain Vex, a Centaurian whose blue-tinged skin showed stress patterns around his eyes. But it was the small figure between them that made Zekhar's breathing stop. A human child, no more than 8 or 9 standard years old, walked with her chin held high despite the obvious fear in her bright green eyes. Her brown hair hung in tangled waves around a face that showed both defiance and exhaustion. She wore the standard orange jumpsuit of a station prisoner, but it had been altered to fit her tiny frame. "The regulations are clear," Captain Vex was saying. "Prisoners being transported to maximum security facilities must be accompanied by a guardian of equal or greater threat classification." The child's actions resulted in significant station damage and loss of life. "She's a baby," one of the guards protested. "Whatever she did, she can't possibly require a Class 5 guardian." Zekhar moved closer to the barrier, his massive form casting shadows across the corridor. The guards tensed, raising their weapons slightly, but the child showed no fear. Instead, she looked directly at him with those startling green eyes. "What did she do?" Zekhar asked, his voice like grinding stone after years of disuse. The guard stepped back in surprise. Captain Vex cleared his throat. "You spoke. What did she do?" Zekhar repeated, never taking his eyes off the small human. Captain Vex consulted his datapad. "Prisoner designation human, 7439, also known as Emichun, age 9 standard years. Charges include destruction of station property, endangering civilian lives, and..." He paused, clearly uncomfortable. "Mass homicide." The corridor fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Zekhar studied the child more carefully. She stood perfectly still, but he could see the slight tremor in her hands, the way she pressed her lips together to keep them from quivering. "The incident occurred in the civilian quarters," Captain Vex continued. "A group of Caltharian slavers had taken hostages, including several children. Standard negotiation protocols failed. The child somehow accessed the station's environmental controls and vented the entire sector to space. Killing the hostages as well," one of the guards added grimly. No. The child spoke for the first time, her voice small but clear. I saved them. I made sure they had emergency suits. I checked every room twice before I opened vents. The slavers died, Captain Vex said. 14 Caltharians suffocated in vacuum. Good, Emma replied without hesitation. They were going to hurt the other kids. Zekhar felt something stir in his chest, an emotion he had not experienced in years. This small human had done what station security could not. She had saved innocent lives by taking others, and she showed no remorse for protecting those who could not protect themselves. The Galactic Court sentenced her to life imprisonment on Omega Prison, Captain Vex explained. But she requires a guardian for transport, someone who can ensure she reaches her destination safely. And you chose me because no one else volunteered, Zekhar said. We chose you because your psychological profile indicates a low probability of escape attempts, Captain Vex corrected, and because your species' natural protective instincts make you suitable for guardian duty. Zekhar almost laughed at the irony. His protective instincts were exactly what had gotten him banished from his own world. The Vorthak High Council had demanded he allow a colony of peaceful researchers to be destroyed to prevent a war. When he had refused and instead helped them escape, he had been branded a traitor and cast out. What happens if I refuse? He asked. Then she travels alone, Captain Vex said simply. And given the reputation of Omega Prison's intake procedures for new arrivals, especially young ones, he didn't need to finish. Zekhar had heard the stories. Omega Prison was where the galaxy sent beings it wanted to forget. The strong preyed on the weak, and guards looked the other way. A human child would not survive her first day. Emma stepped forward, stopping just inches from the barrier. She looked up at Zekhar with eyes that held far too much understanding for someone her age. I know what you are, she said quietly. I accessed the station's records before they caught me. I know why you're here. Zekhar knelt down to bring himself closer to her level, though he still towered over her even in that position. And what did you learn, small human? You saved people who couldn't save themselves, she said. Just like I did. That's why they punished you. The guards shifted uncomfortably. Captain Vex cleared his throat. We need an answer now. The transport leaves in less than 6 hours. Zekhar studied the child's face. He saw determination there and intelligence, but also something else. Hope. This small being still believed that doing the right thing mattered, even when it led to punishment, even when it led to a lifetime in the galaxy's worst prison. I will accept guardian duty, he said finally. Captain Vex nodded curtly. Transport preparation begins immediately. You will both be transferred to the departure bay in 4 hours. As the guards began to move away, Emma pressed her small hand against the barrier where Zekhar's much larger one rested on the other side. Thank you, she whispered. Zekhar felt the stirring in his chest grow stronger. For the first time in 3 years, he had a purpose beyond simple survival. This child had risked everything to save innocence, just as he had. The galaxy had condemned them both for their compassion, but perhaps together they could find a way to prove that protecting others was never wrong. What is your real name? He asked. Emma, she replied. Emma Chun. What's yours? Zekhar of the Western Mountains, he said, using the formal introduction of his people. I'm honored to meet you, Emma Chun. The guards were calling for her to move along, but Emma didn't step away immediately. The transport to Omega Prison, she said. It's going to be dangerous, isn't it? Zekhar considered lying, but this child had already seen too much of life's harsh realities to be comforted by false hope. Yes, he said. Very dangerous. Emma nodded as if she had expected this answer. Then, I guess it's good that I'll have you with me. As she was led away, Zekhar remained kneeling by the barrier, watching until she disappeared around a corner. The stirring in his chest had become something stronger now, something he recognized from his youth on Vorthak Prime. The deep, unbreakable bond of a guardian to their charge. The next 4 hours passed slowly. Zekhar was processed for transport, his few possessions cataloged and returned to him. A guard he didn't recognize brought him a meal and information about the journey ahead. The transport ship is the Grim Venture, the guard explained, consulting a datapad. Class C prisoner transport vessel. The journey to Omega Prison takes 8 standard days. You and the child will share a containment pod for the duration. What kind of security? Zekar asked. The guard seemed surprised by the question. Why would you need to know? If I am to protect my charge, I must understand the threats we may face. The guard considered this, then shrugged. Automated systems, mostly. A skeleton crew of 4 guards and the pilot. The ship stops at 3 stations along the route for refueling and prisoner transfers. Zekar nodded, filing away this information. 3 stops meant 3 opportunities for problems to arise. Prisoner transports were notorious targets for rescue attempts, slave traders, and pirates looking for easy prey. An hour before departure, he was escorted to the transport bay. The grim venture was exactly what he had expected, a battered, utilitarian vessel designed for one purpose only: transport prisoners as cheaply and efficiently as possible. Emma was already aboard, secured in the containment pod they would share. The space was roughly 10 feet by 12 feet, with basic life support, 2 sleeping alcoves, and a small hygiene facility. It was larger than his cell on Kepler Station, but that wasn't saying much. She looked up when he entered, relief evident on her face. I thought maybe you had changed your mind, she said. Vort hacks do not break their word, Zekar replied, settling into a cross-legged position that took up most of the remaining floor space. I said I would protect you, and I will. The pod's door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and within minutes they felt the subtle vibration that meant the ship was departing Kepler Station. Emma sat in her sleeping alcove, legs drawn up to her chest, watching him with curious eyes. Can you tell me about your world? She asked. Vorthack Prime. Zekar was quiet for a long moment. He had not spoken of his home world to anyone since his banishment. It is a place of great beauty, he said finally. Mountains that touch the clouds, forests where the trees sing in the wind. My people are warriors, but we were not always fighters. Long ago, we were gardeners and builders. What changed? The galaxy, Zekar said simply. When we discovered we were not alone, we learned that strength was the only currency other species understood. We adapted, became the warriors others expected us to be. Emma was quiet for a while, processing this. Is that why they banished you? Because you weren't warrior enough? No, Zekar said. I was banished because I was too much of a warrior. Because I chose to fight for those who could not fight for themselves, even when my people commanded me not to. The ship lurched slightly as it entered hyperspace, and the containment pod's artificial gravity adjusted to compensate. Emma gripped the sides of her sleeping alcove until the sensation passed. I've never been in space before, she admitted. I mean, on a station doesn't count, right? You lived on Kepler Station? For 2 years, Emma said. My parents were researchers. They were studying something called quantum fluctuations in space-time. I didn't really understand it, but they said it was important. Zekar noticed she spoke of her parents in past tense. Where are they now? Emma's expression darkened. The Caltharians killed them when they tried to resist the slave raid. That's why I knew what the slavers were planning to do to the other children. The stirring in Zekhar's chest became a burning sensation. This child had lost everything and still found the strength to save others. She was showing the kind of courage that his own people claimed to value above all else. I am sorry for your loss, he said formally. Thank you, Emma replied. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you scared of Omega Prison? Zekar considered the question carefully. Fear was not an emotion his people acknowledged easily, but this child deserved honesty. Yes, he said. I have heard the stories. It is a place where mercy is weakness, and compassion is a luxury few can afford. But you still came with me. Yes. Why? Zekar looked at this small human, this child who had sacrificed her freedom to save others, who faced a lifetime of imprisonment without complaint, who still showed kindness to a banished alien warrior. Because someone must stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm, he said. And because you remind me why that matters. Emma smiled for the first time since he had met her. It transformed her entire face, showing glimpses of the carefree child she should have been allowed to remain. My dad used to say something like that, she said. He told me that the universe was full of scary things, but that just meant good people had to be brave enough to fight them. Your father was wise. Yeah, Emma said softly. I miss him. The first day of their journey passed quietly. Emma slept fitfully, and Zekhar remained awake, listening to the sounds of the ship around them. He had developed the ability to sense danger through subtle changes in vibration and air pressure, skills that had kept him alive during his early years of banishment. On the second day, Emma began to open up more. She told him about her life before the slave raid, about her parents' work, about the friends she had lost. In return, Zekhar shared stories of his youth on Vorthak Prime, carefully avoiding the darker aspects of his military service. It was on the third day that the first sign of trouble appeared. Zekhar was dozing lightly when a change in the ship's engine rhythm woke him. The steady thrum that had accompanied their journey faltered for just a moment before resuming, but the pitch was different now. Emma noticed his alertness immediately. What is it? The ship, Zekhar said, pressing his ear to the pod's wall. Something has changed. Before Emma could respond, the containment pod's communication system crackled to life. Attention, prisoners, came the voice of Captain Torres, the transport vessel's commander. We are experiencing minor technical difficulties. All containment pods will remain sealed until further notice. Zekhar exchanged glances with Emma. In his experience, technical difficulties on prisoner transports were rarely minor, and they usually had very little to do with mechanical problems. The ship lurched suddenly, throwing Emma against the wall of her sleeping alcove. Zekhar caught her before she could be seriously hurt, his reflexes faster than the artificial gravity could compensate. That wasn't a technical difficulty, Emma said, rubbing her shoulder where she had struck the wall. No, Zekhar agreed. That was weapons fire. The communication system crackled again, but this time the voice that came through was different. Rougher, with an accent Zekhar recognized as Caltharian. Attention, cargo, the new voice said with obvious amusement. This vessel is now under new management. Please remain calm while we sort through our new acquisitions. Emma went pale. Pirates. Worse, Zekhar said grimly. Slave traders. The same species that had killed her parents had just taken control of their transport ship. And now Emma, a human child who had already endured more tragedy than most beings experienced in a lifetime, was about to face the very nightmare she had risked everything to prevent. The Caltharian voice continued over the communication system, dripping with cruel satisfaction. We know you can hear us, little treasures. Some of you are going to make us very rich indeed. Emma pressed herself against the wall of the containment pod, her green eyes wide with terror. Zekhar could smell the fear radiating from her, a sharp, acidic scent that triggered every protective instinct his species possessed. They found us, she whispered. How did they find us? Zekhar moved to the pod's door, running his massive hands over the locking mechanism. The transport ship had been designed to keep prisoners in, but not necessarily to keep raiders out. Caltharian slave operations are sophisticated, he explained, working at the lock with two of his hands while the other two remained ready to shield Emma. They have contacts throughout the galaxy. Someone on Kepler Station likely sold them our transport schedule. The ship shuddered again, and this time Zekhar heard the distinctive whine of boarding clamps engaging. The raiders were docking with their vessel. What are they going to do to us? Emma asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. They will sort through the prisoners, Zekhar said grimly. Those with value will be sold. Those without. He left the sentence unfinished. And me? Zekhar stopped working on the lock and looked at her directly. Human children are considered extremely valuable in certain sectors of the galaxy. You would bring a very high price. Emma's face went ashen, but she straightened her shoulders with the same defiance he had seen when they first met. Then, we need to stop them. We are locked in a containment pod on a ship controlled by armed pirates, Zekhar pointed out. Our options are limited. You're Vorthak, Emma said. Aren't you supposed to be incredibly strong? Strength alone is not enough against superior numbers and firepower. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside their pod made both of them freeze. Multiple sets of boots, moving with purpose. Zekar heard the familiar whir of energy weapons being powered up. But strength combined with intelligence might be, he added quietly. Emma's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. You have a plan. The beginning of one, Zekar admitted. But it requires you to trust me completely. I already do. Her simple faith in him was both humbling and terrifying. This child was placing her life in the hands of a banished warrior she had known for only 3 days. The footsteps stopped outside their pod. Zekar heard the distinctive click of door controls being accessed from the outside. When that door opens, he whispered urgently, "Fall down and do not move no matter what happens." "Do you understand?" Emma nodded, her face pale but determined. "And Emma," Zekar added, "whatever you see me do, remember that I am doing it to protect you." The containment pod door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. 3 Caltharians stood in the corridor, their reptilian features twisted into expressions of cruel anticipation. They wore mismatched armor and carried energy weapons that had seen better days, but Zekar could smell the confidence radiating from them. They thought they were looking at a caged animal and helpless child. They were about to learn otherwise. The lead Caltharian, a scar veteran with missing scales along his neck, stepped forward. Well, what do we have here? A Vorthak warrior and a human pup. The human will bring at least 50,000 credits on Zirian Prime, one of his companions said, leering at Emma. Young humans are always in demand. Emma dropped to the floor as Zekar had instructed, curling into a small ball. The Caltharians laughed at what they perceived as childish fear. And the Vorthak, the leader asked, "What's his story?" "Banished," the second pirate replied, consulting a datapad. "Some kind of disgrace to his people. Probably not worth much, but Vorthak slaves can work for decades without breaking." Zekar remained motionless in his cross-legged position, watching the raiders with deceptively calm eyes. They were making exactly the mistakes he had hoped they would make. The leader said, pointing his weapon at Zekar. "On your feet." Slowly, Zekar rose with deliberate sluggishness, keeping his 4 arms at his sides and his movements non-threatening. The Caltharians relaxed slightly, interpreting his compliance as submission. "That's better," the leader said. "Now step out of the pod." Nice and easy. Zekar took 1 step forward, bringing himself within arm's reach of the lead pirate. The corridor was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 beings to stand side by side. The perfect environment for close-quarters combat. "You know," the leader continued conversationally, "I've never killed a Vorthak before. I wonder if you bleed the same color as..." Zekar moved. His lower left arm swept upward, knocking the leader's weapon toward the ceiling. His upper right arm grabbed the pirate's throat, while his upper left arm reached for the second raider's gun. His lower right arm shot out to slam into the third pirate's chest, sending the smaller being crashing into the opposite wall. The entire sequence took less than 3 seconds. The lead Caltharian tried to cry out, but Zekar's grip on his throat prevented any sound beyond a strangled wheeze. The second pirate attempted to bring his weapon to bear, but Zekar's superior reach allowed him to control the gun's aim while delivering a devastating blow to the raider's solar plexus. The third pirate was struggling to get back to his feet when Zekar released the leader's throat long enough to grab him by the ankle and swing him into his companion. Both Caltharians went down in a tangle of limbs and curses. "Emma," Zekar said calmly, never taking his eyes off the 3 pirates. "Please retrieve their weapons." The girl scrambled to her feet and began collecting the energy rifles that had been scattered across the corridor floor. Her hands shook slightly, but she moved with purpose and efficiency. "You have approximately 30 seconds to explain why I should let you live," Zekar told the lead pirate, who was clutching his throat and glaring up at him with hate-filled eyes. "You're trapped on this ship," the Caltharian rasped. "Kill us, and the others will hunt you down." "How many others?" Zekar asked. When the pirate didn't answer, Zekar pressed his foot against the being's chest, applying just enough pressure to make breathing difficult. 8 more, the leader gasped, plus the captain. "Where are they now?" "Bridge." Engine room. Cargo bay, sorting prisoners. Sekar nu de tugt for 9 more pirates, spread throughout the ship. Dangerous odds, but not impossible if he could use the ship's layout to his advantage. Emma, he said without turning around. Are you familiar with ship schematics? I can read them, she replied. My parents taught me basic ship operations. Excellent. We need to reach the ship's computer core. One of the downed pirates let out a laugh. You think you could take back the ship? You're one warrior against 9 armed raiders. Zekar looked down at him with something that might have been pity. I'm not just one warrior, he said quietly. I'm a Vorthak guardian protecting his charge. And you have made the mistake of threatening a human child in my care. The pirate's laughter died as he saw something in Zekhar's eyes that made his scales ripple with primitive fear. Emma, Zekhar said, please step back into the pod for a moment. She obeyed without question, though he could see her watching through the doorway. What happened next took exactly 47 seconds, and when it was over, 3 Caltharian pirates lay unconscious in the corridor. Zekhar had been careful not to kill them, but they would not be waking up anytime soon. Are they dead? Emma asked in a small voice. No, Zekhar replied, checking their pulses to be certain. But they will not interfere with us again. He quickly searched the pirates, retrieving key cards, communication devices, and additional weapons. Emma helped by dragging the unconscious raiders into their containment pod, which could be locked from the outside. Now what? She asked. Zekhar considered their options. The ship was under pirate control, with 9 more raiders spread throughout its various sections. The original crew was either dead or imprisoned, meaning there was no help coming from that direction. We need information, he decided. Ship layout, enemy positions, status of other prisoners. The computer core will have everything we need. They made their way carefully through the ship's corridors, Zekhar leading with one of the captured energy rifles, while Emma stayed close behind him. The vessel was larger than Zekhar had initially estimated, with multiple levels and dozens of containment areas for prisoners. The computer core was located on the ship's middle deck, protected by a heavy security door that would normally require command codes to access. Fortunately, Emma turned out to have an unexpected talent. I can bypass the lock, she said, studying the door's control panel. It's just basic encryption. My mom taught me how to break these when we used to play games on Kepler Station. While Emma worked on the lock, Zekhar stood guard, listening for approaching footsteps. He could hear distant voices and the occasional sound of weapons fire, suggesting that other prisoners were not going quietly. Got it, Emma whispered as the door slid open. The computer core was a cramped room filled with humming servers and blinking displays. Emma immediately went to work at the main terminal, her small fingers flying over the controls with surprising skill. There, she said after a few minutes. I've got ship schematics, crew locations, and prisoner manifest. Zekhar studied the information over her shoulder. The display showed the ship's layout in 3 dimensions, with red dots marking the locations of the remaining pirates. Most were concentrated in the cargo bay, where they were apparently sorting through the other prisoners. How many prisoners in total? He asked. 23, Emma replied, mostly beings convicted of minor crimes. A few political prisoners. And she paused, her face growing pale. 3 other children. Zekhar felt his protective instincts flare even stronger. It was one thing to rescue Emma from these pirates. It was another entirely to abandon other innocent children to slavery. Can you access the ship's internal communication system? He asked. Emma's fingers danced across the controls. Yes, I can patch into any system from here. Good. I want you to monitor the pirates' communications. Learn everything you can about their operations, their plans, their weaknesses. What are you going to do? Zekhar checked the charge on his captured energy rifle. I'm going to remind them why the galaxy fears Vorthak warriors. Emma caught his arm as he turned to leave. Wait, you can't fight 9 pirates by yourself. That's suicide. I will not be fighting 9 pirates, Zekhar said with grim certainty. I will be hunting them. The difference was crucial. In a straight fight, 9 armed raiders would have overwhelming advantages. But Zekhar had not survived 3 years of banishment by fighting fair. He had learned to use every advantage available to him, no matter how small. "I need you to stay here," he told Emma. "Monitor their communications, track their movements, and be ready to help the other prisoners once I create an opening." "How will I know when?" Zekar allowed himself a small, predatory smile. "Trust me, you will know." He left Emma in the computer core and began moving through the ship with the patience of a natural hunter. The Caltharians were confident in their control of the vessel, which made them careless. They posted no guards in the corridors, relying instead on their superior numbers and firepower. It was a mistake that would cost them dearly. Zekar's first target was a lone pirate making his way to the engine room. The Caltharian never saw him coming. One moment the corridor was empty, the next a massive four-armed shadow dropped from a maintenance shaft overhead. The pirate's weapon clattered to the floor as Zekar's hands closed around his throat. A few whispered questions revealed useful information about the raiders' plans and organization. Then, the pirate joined his unconscious companions in dreamless sleep. 8 remaining. The second target was more challenging. 2 pirates were standing guard outside the bridge, their weapons at ready, and their attention focused on the corridor approaches. Zekar spent nearly an hour working his way through the ship's maintenance systems before he found a position directly above them. When he dropped down behind them, they had just enough time to realize their mistake before Zekar's fist sent them into unconsciousness. 6 remaining. Emma's voice crackled through his stolen communicator as he dragged the unconscious guards into a nearby storage room. "Zekar, they're getting nervous. Their captain is demanding status report from the guards you just took out." "How long before they realize something is wrong?" "Maybe 10 minutes. They're too busy arguing over prisoner values to pay close attention." 10 minutes was not much time, but it would have to be enough. Zekar made his way toward the cargo bay, where the remaining 6 pirates were sorting through their human cargo like merchants appraising livestock. He paused outside the cargo bay entrance, listening to the voices within. "The Andorian female will bring good money," one voice was saying. "Andorians are prized for their intelligence." "What about the human children?" another voice asked. "Premium merchandise," came the reply. "Human children are worth their weight in quantum crystals." Zekar felt something cold and terrible settle in his chest. These beings spoke of children as commodities, innocent lives as sources of profit. They had turned suffering into business. It was time to remind them that some things in the universe still fought back. The cargo bay doors exploded inward as Zekhar's four-armed assault began. The Caltharians barely had time to raise their weapons before a force of nature descended upon them. This was not the careful, silent hunt he had conducted throughout the rest of the ship. This was the full fury of a Vorthak warrior protecting innocent lives, and it was a sight that would haunt the survivors' nightmares for years to come. The cargo bay erupted into chaos as Zekhar burst through the doors like an ancient war god made flesh. His 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, each one serving a different purpose in the deadly dance of combat that followed. The first pirate fell before he could even raise his weapon, Zekhar's lower left fist connecting with his solar plexus and sending him crashing into a stack of cargo containers. The second managed to get off a single wild shot that scorched the ceiling before Zekhar's upper right arm swept his legs out from under him. "Kill the warrior," the pirate captain screamed from behind an overturned table. "Protect the merchandise." But the remaining pirates were already discovering that Caltharian confidence meant nothing against Vorthak fury. Zekhar moved through their ranks like a storm, using his superior reach and strength to devastating effect. Energy bolts sizzled through the air around him, but none found their mark. The prisoners, still secured in their transport restraints, watched in amazement as their unlikely savior dismantled their captors with methodical precision. Among them were the 3 children Emma had identified, 2 human boys who couldn't have been older than 12, and a young Andorian girl with pale blue skin and large, frightened eyes. "Behind you," one of the human boys shouted. Zekhar spun just in time to catch a pirate who had been attempting to ambush him from behind. His upper arms grabbed the Caltharian's weapon, while his lower arms delivered a blow that sent the raider spinning into unconsciousness. 3 pirates remained conscious, including their captain, who was firing desperately from his improvised cover. "You think this changes anything?" the captain snarled. "Even if you kill us all, you're still trapped on this ship. The Caltharian fleet knows our position. They'll come for their property." Zekhar advanced on the captain's position with terrifying calm. Energy bolts struck his chest and shoulders, but his thick hide absorbed the impacts without serious damage. Vorthak physiology had evolved on a world where survival meant weathering both storms and predators, and their natural armor reflected that heritage. "Your mistake," Zekhar said as he reached the overturned table, "is believing these children are property to be owned." He grabbed the table with his lower arms and lifted it effortlessly, exposing the cowering captain. The Caltharian's weapon clicked empty, and his scaled face went pale as he realized he was out of ammunition. "They are not property," Zekhar continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. "They're children who deserve to grow up free from fear. And I am their guardian." The captain tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Zekhar's final blow sent him into the same unconscious state as his companions, and suddenly, the cargo bay was quiet except for the humming of the ship's systems. "Is it over?" asked one of the human boys. "For now," Zekhar replied, moving quickly to release the prisoners from their restraints. "But we are not safe yet." As he freed the children, Emma's voice crackled through his communicator. "Zekhar, I'm reading incoming ships on the sensors. 3 vessels, Caltharian configuration, approximately 2 hours out." Zekhar cursed in his native language, a sound like grinding stone that made several of the freed prisoners step back nervously. "Can you identify them?" "Working on it," Emma replied. "But from their vector and speed, I'd guess they're the backup fleet that Captain mentioned." Zekhar looked around the cargo bay at the 23 prisoners he had just freed. Most were adults convicted of minor crimes: smuggling, fraud, tax evasion. A few were political prisoners who had spoken out against corrupt governments. All of them were looking at him with expressions of hope and fear. "Listen to me carefully," he announced. "This ship has been retaken, but we are still in danger. Caltharian reinforcements are coming, and they will not be as careless as the pirates we just defeated." "What do we do?" asked an elderly Centaurian who had been imprisoned for refusing to pay bribes to local officials. "We run," Zekhar said simply. "But first, we need to make some modifications to this ship." Over the next hour, Zekhar organized the freed prisoners into work crews. Those with technical skills helped Emma reprogram the ship's systems, while others worked on converting the cargo bay into a defensible position. The adult prisoners followed his orders without question, recognizing competent leadership when they saw it. The 3 children stayed close to him, their trust both heartening and terrifying. The 2 human boys, Marcus and David, were brothers who had been swept up in the same slave raid that had targeted Emma's station. The Andorian girl, whose name was Tvala, had been taken from a research colony when her parents refused to hand over their scientific data to pirates. "Are you really going to get us home?" Tvala asked in accented standard, her large eyes searching his face for signs of deception. "I will try," Zekhar replied honestly. "But first we need to survive the next few hours." Emma emerged from the computer core with a grim expression. "I've been analyzing the incoming ship's signatures. They're not just pirates. They're Caltharian Navy vessels operating under letters of marque." Zekhar felt his blood chill. Letters of marque were legal documents that allowed private vessels to operate as authorized raiders for a government. It meant these weren't just criminals looking for profit. They were officially sanctioned slavers with the backing of the Caltharian government. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 90 minutes, Emma replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." "Can this ship outrun them?" Emma shook her head. "The Grim Venture is a transport vessel, not a racing ship. They'll catch us long before we can reach any friendly territory." Zekhar studied the ship's schematics on Emma's datapad, his mind racing through possibilities. Running was not an option. Hiding was not possible in open space. That left only one alternative. "We fight," he decided. "Fight?" asked Marcus incredulously. We're prisoners on a transport ship against 3 military vessels. Not prisoners, Zekar corrected. Free beings defending innocent lives. He gathered the adult prisoners around him, explaining his plan with the same calm authority he had once used to command troops on distant battlefields. This ship has limited weapons, but it does have one advantage. They want us alive. Slaves are valuable, but corpses are worthless. They will try to disable us, not destroy us. And how does that help us? Asked a Vulcan who had been imprisoned for harboring refugees from civil war. Because we will not show them the same courtesy, Zekar replied. Emma, can you override the weapon system safeties? Already done, she said with a small smile. I also found something interesting in the ship's cargo manifest. We're carrying a load of quantum explosives bound for the mining colonies. Zekar's expression became predatory. How much? Enough to crack a small moon, Emma replied. The previous crew was supposed to deliver them to the Omega system. Perfect, Zekar said. We're going to give the Caltharians a choice. Leave us alone, or learn why it is dangerous to threaten a Vortex charges. The next hour was spent in frantic preparation. The adult prisoners with military experience helped Zekar plan their defense, while others worked on rigging the quantum explosives into improvised weapons. Emma and Tvala proved surprisingly adept at rewiring the ship's systems, creating new control linkages that would allow them to coordinate their attacks. Contact, Emma announced from her position at the sensor console. 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're hailing us. Zekar took his position at the communication station. Put them through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a Caltharian naval officer whose scarred face spoke of long experience in the profession of violence. Attention, stolen vessel, the officer said with cold professionalism. This is Captain Skesh of the Caltharian Navy ship Predator's Edge. You're ordered to surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is Zekar of Vorthak Prime, Zekar replied, using his full ceremonial title for the first time in years. These beings are under my protection. Withdraw now, and you will not be harmed. Captain Skesh laughed, a sound like breaking glass. 1 exile against 3 Navy ships? You must be joking. I do not joke about the safety of children, Zekar said quietly. This is your only warning. Begin boarding operations, Skesh ordered his crew, cutting the communication link. Zekar turned to face the assembled prisoners. 23 beings from a dozen different species, united only by their determination to remain free. 3 children who deserve the chance to grow up without fear. 1 brilliant human girl who had already sacrificed everything to protect innocence. They have chosen, he announced. Now we show them the price of that choice. The Caltharian ships closed in with practiced efficiency, their weapons powered but not yet firing. They moved in a standard boarding formation, preparing to disable the transport's engines while Marines prepared for assault. Emma, are you ready? Zekar asked. Quantum charges armed and ready, she replied from her position at the weapons console. But, Zekar, if this goes wrong. It will not go wrong, he said with absolute conviction. You have my word. The lead Caltharian ship moved into docking position, extending boarding tubes toward the transport's airlocks. On the screen, Zekar could see armored Marines preparing to board their vessel. Marcus, David, Tvala, he called to the 3 children. Take cover behind the cargo containers. Do not come out until I tell you it is safe. What about you? Marcus asked. I will be doing what I was born to do, Zekar replied. Protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The first boarding tube made contact with the ship's hull. Through the security cameras, they could see Caltharian Marines preparing to cut through the airlock. Now, Zekar said calmly. Emma's finger pressed the firing control, and the universe became fire and light. The quantum explosives, carefully shaped and directed by their preparations, turned the grim venture into a weapon more powerful than anything the Caltharians had expected. The explosion tore through the boarding tube and into the lead ship's hull, sending the vessel spinning away with massive hull breaches. But Zekar had been careful. The explosion was directed outward, leaving the transport's core sections intact while devastating anything trying to board them. Direct hit, Emma announced. The lead ship is severely damaged. The remaining two Caltharian vessels pulled back, their commanders apparently reassessing the threat level they were facing. The communication system crackled back to life. Impossible, Captain Skesh's voice snarled. How did you? I warned you, Zekhar interrupted. Now you have a choice. Leave us in peace, or discover what other surprises await you. The screen flickered and revealed Captain Skesh's bridge, now showing signs of damage and emergency lighting. The Caltharian's scaled face was twisted with rage. You think one lucky shot changes anything? We still have two ships against your floating wreck. Emma, Zekhar said quietly. Show him our remaining cargo. The screen split to show the transport's cargo bay, where dozens of additional quantum charges sat ready for deployment. The Caltharians' faces went pale as they realized the implications. As you can see, Zekhar continued, we have enough firepower to destroy your entire fleet. More importantly, we have the will to use it. These children have already lost everything to Caltharian raiders. They have nothing left to lose. Captain Skesh was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing his options. 3 children and 20 adult prisoners against the military might of 2 Navy ships should have been an easy calculation. But quantum explosives changed that equation dramatically. What do you want? He asked finally. Safe passage to the nearest neutral system, Zekhar replied. No pursuit, no further harassment. In return, you and your crews live to see another day. And the prisoners? The Caltharian government has legal claim to those slaves. Zekhar's expression became stone. These are not slaves. They are free beings who will be delivered safely to worlds where their freedom will be respected. The Galactic Council will do nothing, Zekhar interrupted, because no one will report this incident. If word spreads that 3 Caltharian Navy ships were defeated by a transport full of prisoners, it will be quite embarrassing for your military reputation. Captain Skesh's scales rippled with suppressed fury, but Zekhar could see him calculating the odds. A Pyrrhic victory that left his fleet crippled and his reputation in ruins, or a tactical withdrawal that could be explained away as a navigation error. You have 10 minutes to leave this system, Skesh said finally. After that, we will consider this vessel to be carrying stolen property and act accordingly. Agreed, Zekhar replied. But Captain Skesh, if I ever encounter your ships threatening innocent children again, I will not be so generous. The communication link went dark, and within minutes the 2 damaged Caltharian vessels were jumping back into hyperspace. The cargo bay erupted in cheers from the freed prisoners, but Zekhar remained focused on their escape. Emma, plot a course for the sanctuary system, he ordered. Maximum speed. Already laid in, she replied. We'll be in hyperspace in 3 minutes. As the stars elongated around them, and the transport ship entered the safety of faster-than-light travel, Zekhar finally allowed himself to relax. They had won this battle, but the war for these children's freedom was far from over. Emma approached him as he stood looking out at the swirling patterns of hyperspace. You did it, she said simply. You saved everyone. We did it, Zekhar corrected. Your technical skills and courage were as important as any weapon. Emma was quiet for a moment, then asked the question he had been dreading. What happens now? I mean, the other prisoners can go home, but Marcus and David and Tvala and me, we don't really have homes to go back to. Zekhar knelt down to her level, his massive form somehow managing to seem gentle despite its intimidating appearance. Then, we will find you new homes, he said. Safe places where you can grow up in peace. And you? Where will you go? Zekhar considered the question. For 3 years he had been a prisoner, a banished exile with no purpose beyond survival. But these past few days had reminded him who he really was beneath the shame and isolation. I will go wherever you need me to go, he said finally. A guardian's duty does not end when the immediate danger passes. Emma smiled, that same bright expression that had given him hope in their prison cell. Then, I think we're going to be fine, she said, looking around at the 3 children who had already endured so much, and the 20 adults who had chosen to fight for their freedom rather than submit to slavery. Zekhar found himself believing her. They were free, they were alive, and they had each other. For now, that was enough. The sanctuary system lived up to its name. As their battered transport ship dropped out of hyperspace, Zekhar could see why refugees and outcasts from across the galaxy sought shelter here. 3 inhabited worlds orbited a stable yellow star, each one governed by the principle that all sentient beings deserved freedom and dignity regardless of their species or past. Incoming transmission from Sanctuary Station. Emma announced from her position at the communications console. Over the past week of travel, she had naturally taken on the role of the ship's communications officer, her quick mind adapting easily to the complex protocols required for interstellar contact. "Put them through," Zekhar replied. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She wore the simple blue uniform of the Sanctuary Authority, and her expression showed genuine concern rather than the suspicious hostility they had encountered at other way stations. Transport Vessel Grim Venture. This is Director Sarah Martinez of Sanctuary Station. We received your distress beacon and request for asylum. Are you in immediate danger? No immediate danger, Zekhar replied. But we are carrying 23 refugees seeking sanctuary, including 4 children who have lost their families to slave raiders. Director Martinez's expression softened. Children? How old? Ages 7 to 12, standard years, Emma interjected, speaking up from her console. 3 humans and 1 Andorian. All parents confirmed deceased. My God, Martinez breathed. Bring them in immediately. Base 7 is cleared for your approach. We'll have medical teams and counselors standing by. As their ship was guided toward the station, Zekhar gathered the freed prisoners in the main cargo bay. Over the past week, they had formed a tight-knit community bound together by their shared ordeal. The adult prisoners had taken on protective roles toward the children, while the children themselves had shown remarkable resilience in the face of trauma. What happens now? Asked Dr. Elan, an elderly Vulcan scientist who had been imprisoned for refusing to develop weapons for a military dictatorship. Like many of the others, he had found new purpose in helping care for the children during their journey. Now you're free to choose your own paths, Zekhar replied. Sanctuary system does not extradite refugees to governments that would persecute them. You can request asylum here, or travel to other worlds that will accept you. And the children? Asked Marcus, the older of the 2 human brothers. At 12, he had appointed himself protector of his younger brother David, and had developed a fierce loyalty to Zekhar during their journey. The children will be placed with foster families who understand their needs, Zekhar explained. The Sanctuary Authority has extensive experience caring for refugee children. What about you? Emma asked quietly. Are you staying? Zekhar had been wrestling with that question for days. His duty as a guardian was to ensure the children's safety, but once they were in the care of qualified families, did his responsibility end? Could he simply walk away from these for young beings who had come to depend on him? We will see, he said diplomatically. The docking process went smoothly, and soon they were walking through the gleaming corridors of Sanctuary Station. Director Martinez met them at the airlock, accompanied by medical personnel and child welfare specialists. Her greeting was warm but professional. Welcome to Sanctuary, she said, addressing the group as a whole before focusing on the children. I know this has been a terrible experience for all of you, but you're safe now. We're going to take very good care of you. Tvala, the young Andorian girl, pressed closer to Zekhar's side. Her pale blue skin had regained some of its healthy color during the journey, but she still startled at unexpected sounds and had nightmares about the raiders who had killed her parents. Will we stay together? She asked in her accented standard. For now, yes, Director Martinez assured her. We have temporary quarters where you can all rest while we assess your individual needs. After that, we'll work on finding permanent placements that are right for each of you. The medical examinations revealed what Zekhar had suspected. All 4 children were physically healthy, but showed signs of psychological trauma. The counselors were gentle and patient, but Their questions about family history and cultural preferences made it clear that the children would eventually be separated and placed with different families. That evening, as Zekhar sat in the station's observation lounge watching the stars, Emma found him there. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, settling into a chair beside him. "Vorthax require less sleep than humans," he replied. "But no, I've been thinking." "About what?" Zekhar was quiet for a moment, organizing his thoughts. "About duty. About purpose. About what happens when a guardian's charges no longer need protection." Emma studied his profile against the starfield. "You're thinking about leaving. The Sanctuary Authority is very competent. You will all receive excellent care. That's not the same as having family," Emma said softly. The simple statement hit Zekhar harder than any weapon ever had. Family. It was a concept that had been taken from him when his people cast him out, something he had thought lost forever. But these children had somehow filled that void, giving him a purpose that went beyond mere survival. "I'm a banished warrior," he said finally. "I have no home to offer, no resources beyond my skills in combat. What kind of life could I provide?" "A life where we're together," Emma replied with the straightforward honesty that had first drawn him to protect her. "A life where Marcus doesn't wake up every night checking to make sure David is still there. A life where Tvala doesn't flinch every time someone raises their voice. A life where I don't have to pretend I'm not scared about what comes next." Zekhar turned to look at her fully. "You would want that? Even knowing what I am, what I've done?" "You saved us," Emma said simply. "You risked your life to protect children you barely knew. You fought an entire pirate crew because they threatened innocence. If that's not what family does for each other, then I don't know what family means." The next morning, Zekhar requested a private meeting with Director Martinez. Her office was comfortable but functional, with holographic displays showing the status of hundreds of refugee cases across the 3 worlds of the sanctuary system. "I want to discuss the children's placement," he began. "Of course," Martinez replied, calling up their files. "We've had several families express interest already. The Chun girl's intelligence score suggests she would do well with the Hendersons on New Geneva. They're both scientists and have experience with gifted children. The brothers could stay together with the Kowalski family on Haven's Rest. And little Tvala would be perfect for the Salhan family on Refuge. They're Andorians who specifically requested a young girl to join their household." "All different worlds," Zekhar observed. "Well, yes. We place children based on their individual needs and cultural compatibility. It's the best way to ensure successful integration." "What if there was an alternative?" Martinez raised an eyebrow. "What kind of alternative?" "What if someone wanted to adopt all 4 children together?" "That would be unusual," Martinez said carefully. "The paperwork alone would be complex, and we need to ensure the prospective parent had adequate resources and support systems." "May I ask who you have in mind?" "Me." Martinez stared at him for several seconds, clearly processing this unexpected development. "You want to adopt 4 children? A banished alien warrior with no fixed address wants to become a single parent to traumatized refugee children." "Yes. This is highly irregular, Zekhar. Our standard protocols require extensive background checks, psychological evaluations, home studies, financial assessments. Then conduct them," Zekhar replied calmly. "I will submit to whatever tests you require." Martinez leaned back in her chair, studying him with the experienced eye of someone who had dealt with thousands of refugee cases. "Why?" she asked finally. "You could walk away right now. Start fresh somewhere else. Why tie yourself down with the responsibility of raising 4 children?" Zekhar considered how to explain the bond he felt with these young beings, the way their courage and resilience had rekindled something in him that he had thought dead. "Because they're my family now," he said simply. "And family protects each other." The next weeks were a whirlwind of interviews, evaluations, and bureaucratic procedures. The Sanctuary Authority was thorough in their assessment, bringing in specialists to evaluate Zekhar's psychological state, his cultural background, and his ability to provide for 4 children from 3 different species. The children themselves were consulted extensively. All 4 expressed their desire to stay with Zekhar, though the counselors were careful to ensure they understood what adoption would mean. "He'll be like your dad," the counselor explained to Tvala during one of their sessions. "I know," the young Andorian replied solemnly. "He already is." The biggest challenge was finding a suitable home. The sanctuary system had many worlds, but few properties that could accommodate a Vorthack size requirements while also providing appropriate spaces for human and Andorian children. The solution came from an unexpected source. Dr. Ilan, the Vulcan scientist who had been among the freed prisoners, approached Zekhar with a proposal. "I have accepted a position with the Sanctuary Research Institute on Haven's Rest," he explained. "They have offered me a research facility with attached living quarters, far more space than I require for myself alone. If you're interested, I would welcome having neighbors." The property was perfect. A former agricultural research station set in rolling hills beside a crystal-clear lake. The main house was large enough to accommodate Zekhar's eyes while providing individual rooms for each child. The surrounding land offered space to roam and play, while the nearby town provided schools and social opportunities. "It's beautiful," Emma breathed as they toured the property together. "And far from major shipping lanes," added Marcus, who had developed a keen interest in tactical planning during their escape. "Easy to defend if anyone comes looking for us." Tvala said nothing, but Zekhar noticed how she relaxed as they explored the property, her usual tension fading as she realized this could truly be a safe place. David, the youngest at 7, summed up all their feelings with characteristic directness. "Can we live here forever?" "If you want to," Zekhar replied. "This would be our home." The final approval came 3 months later. Director Martinez delivered the news personally, her formal demeanor breaking into a genuine smile as she handed Zekhar the adoption documents. "Congratulations," she said. "It's official. You are now the legal guardian of 4 very lucky children." "I'm the lucky one," Zekhar corrected, looking at Emma, Marcus, David, and Tvala as they clustered around him. "They have given me a gift I never expected to receive." "What's that?" "A family." The settlement process took several more weeks, but finally, they were ready to move into their new home. Dr. Ilan had already taken up residence in the research facility and helped prepare the main house for their arrival. As their transport landed beside the lake, Zekhar watched his children press their faces to the windows, staring out at the home that would be theirs. "It's really ours?" David asked for the 10th time. "Really ours," Zekhar confirmed. Emma was characteristically practical. "We'll need to establish security protocols and communication systems. And someone should map the local area for potential threats. Someone should also catch some of those fish in the lake," Marcus added, pointing to the silver shapes moving in the clear water. "I bet they taste good grilled." Tvala was quiet, but Zekhar could see her calculating distances and sight lines with the same tactical awareness that Emma and Marcus had developed. These children had learned hard lessons about the dangers the galaxy could hold, but they had also learned that those dangers could be faced and defeated. That first night in their new home, Zekhar sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. The children were inside, exploring their new rooms and arguing good-naturedly about chore assignments and house rules. Emma emerged from the house and settled beside him on the wide steps designed to accommodate his Vorthack proportions. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Your old life before everything changed?" Zekhar considered the question. His life on Vorthack Prime seemed like a distant dream now, full of duty and honor codes that felt hollow compared to the simple reality of protecting those he loved. "No," he said finally. "That life taught me to be a warrior. This life has taught me to be something more important." "What's that?" Zekhar listened to the sounds coming from inside the house. Marcus explaining the finer points of human cooking to Tvala. David's laughter as he discovered the house's hidden passages, the quiet hum of contentment that came from a family at peace. "A father," he said simply. Emma smiled and leaned against his massive arm, a gesture of trust and affection that still amazed him every time she did it. "Good," she said. Because we're going to need you to be the best father in the galaxy. Why is that? Emma's smile turned mischievous, the expression of a child who knew something the adults didn't. Because I've been monitoring the galactic news feeds, she said. Word is spreading about what happened with the Caltharian pirates. About a banished Vorthak warrior who saved 23 prisoners and for children from slavery. Zekar felt a chill of apprehension. And apparently there are a lot of other children out there who need saving, Emma said. Children who don't have anyone to protect them from the things that go bump in the dark between stars. She looked up at him with those bright green eyes that had first sparked his protective instincts. I think we're going to have a very interesting life. Looking down at this remarkable child who had already endured so much and still believed in fighting for what was right, Zekar realized she was probably correct. But for the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to whatever challenges awaited them. After all, they would face them as a family. 6 months later, Zekar stood in the kitchen of their lakeside home, carefully preparing breakfast for his family. His massive hands, once designed solely for warfare, had learned to handle delicate tasks like cracking eggs without destroying them and measuring ingredients with precision that would have impressed his old military instructors. The morning routine had become sacred to him. Emma always woke first, padding quietly to the kitchen to help with preparations while reviewing overnight communications. Marcus came down next, usually carrying a sleepy David who refused to wake up on his own. Tvala arrived last, but only after completing her morning meditation and physical exercises, a routine she had developed to help manage the anxiety that still occasionally overwhelmed her. Anything interesting in the overnight feeds? Zekar asked as Emma scrolled through messages on her datapad. 3 things, she replied, her expression growing serious in that way that meant she had found something important. First, Dr. Elon's research grant was approved. He'll be able to expand the facility and bring in additional scientists. That is good news, Zekar said, flipping pancakes with the oversized spatula he had commissioned from a local craftsman. What else? Second, the Galactic Council is considering new legislation about refugee protection. Something about establishing sanctuary worlds specifically for displaced children. Also good news. Emma hesitated, then continued. Third, we received a priority communication from Director Martinez. She wants to speak with us this afternoon about something she calls an opportunity to make a difference. Zekar paused in his cooking. In the 6 months since they had settled on Haven's Rest, they had built a peaceful life centered around the children's education and emotional healing. Marcus had thrown himself into engineering studies, designing improved security systems for their property. David had discovered a talent for languages and was already fluent in 3 alien dialects. Tvala had found peace in the study of xenobiology, cataloging the diverse life forms in their lake ecosystem. Emma, unsurprisingly, had become fascinated with galactic communications networks and had turned their home into an unofficial monitoring station for refugee situations throughout the sector. What kind of opportunity? Marcus asked, arriving in the kitchen with David still clinging to his back like a sleepy monkey. Unknown, Emma replied. But the transmission was tagged with highest priority codes. David finally opened his eyes and sniffed the air appreciatively. Pancakes, Zekar confirmed, setting a plate in front of him. With the syrup you like. Tvala entered the kitchen in time to hear the end of the conversation. If Director Martinez is calling us personally, it must be important, she observed with typical Andorian directness. Maybe another family needs help, David suggested between bites of pancake. Like we did. Zekar exchanged glances with Emma. They had discussed this possibility many times. Word of their escape from the Caltharian pirates had spread throughout the refugee networks, and they regularly received messages from beings seeking help or advice. So far, they had limited their assistance to information and communication support, but he knew Emma had been hoping for more direct involvement. We should at least hear what she has to say, Emma said carefully. That afternoon, they gathered in the house's main communication room as Director Martinez's image appeared on the holographic display. Her expression was grave, but Zekhar could see excitement underlying her professional demeanor. "Thank you all for taking this call," she began. "I have a proposition that I think will interest you." "We are listening," Zekhar replied. Martinez activated a secondary display showing a star map of the Outer Rim territories. 3 days ago, we received a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system. A civilian research station came under attack by Orion Syndicate raiders. Emma's intake of breath was audible. The Orion Syndicate was infamous throughout the galaxy as the largest and most ruthless criminal organization in known space. Unlike the relatively small-scale Caltharian pirate operations they had encountered, the Syndicate operated entire fleets of warships and controlled dozens of star systems. "What happened to the research station?" Marcus asked, his tactical mind already analyzing the implications. "The initial attack was repelled, but barely," Martinez continued. "The station's defenses were damaged. Their communication array is operating at minimal capacity, and they're trapped in system by a Syndicate blockade." "What kind of research station?" Tvala asked. Martinez's expression softened. "A xenobiology research facility focused on developing medical treatments for rare genetic conditions. The lead researcher is Dr. Amara Okafor, a human scientist whose work on Andorian cellular regeneration has saved thousands of lives." "And the station personnel?" Zekhar asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. 47 researchers and support staff," Martinez replied, "including 16 children whose families work at the facility." The communication room fell silent except for the hum of the holographic projectors. 16 children, trapped in a hostile system with one of the galaxy's most dangerous criminal organizations closing in. Children who were probably terrified, probably watching their parents desperately try to find a way to save them. Children who needed a guardian. What is the Galactic Council's response?" Zekhar asked. Martinez's expression grew bitter. The usual bureaucratic delays. Committee meetings, impact assessments, debates about jurisdiction. The nearest council fleet is 2 weeks away, and by then, she didn't need to finish. Everyone in the room understood what would happen to those children if the Orion Syndicate captured them. "What exactly are you proposing?" Emma asked. "The Sanctuary Authority is prepared to launch an independent rescue mission," Martinez replied. "We have a fast courier ship that can reach the Kepler 442 system in 4 days. The problem is that we need someone with the skills and experience to extract 47 civilians from a hostile environment." "And you want us to go?" Marcus said. It wasn't a question. "I want Zekhar to go," Martinez corrected. "You children would remain."